Hey there, my name is Charlotte Mei, and today I have with me Carolyn Lim, Senior Manager of Corporate Communications at Musim Mas. Now, Carolyn, I'm really curious to find out, what does an average week in your role look like?
We'll be thinking about how do we develop a program to train the trainers for smallholders, how do we introduce different modules on literacy, on ergonomic practices into that one module, and how do we bring technology to our space to make our work more efficient. And on other days, I'll be hanging out with my colleagues and talking about how do we have more ideas to generate narrative and content to bring more color and clarity on this industry of ours. Yeah.
So you work with the public, you work with your colleagues, and you also work with farmers, as you said. You create modules for them.
Yes.
That's really interesting. So, I'm sure that, there are many moments where you're firefighting, from many different angles, but who are some of the biggest challengers for you?
My biggest challenge is really to see how do I take in as many perspectives as possible so that our narrative will stick, and to whom are we communicating to, and that we want to bring that story alive. At the heart of it, right, how do you solve the world food crisis, that the world population is growing? You need to feed the world. So where else is the most efficient oil crop in the world? It's palm.
So Carolyn, how does Musim Mas ensure that palm oil is grown sustainably?
We are one of the largest palm oil companies in the world. We are very big downstream. We have about 80% of the global market share. We recognize that with that kind of scale comes a big responsibility to really set the tone right for the industry. We work hand in hand with the non-profit, with the private sector, with the local governments, and then have the thriving extension service that can really support the needs of the smallholders. When we look at our supply base about 6 years ago, we find that smallholders contribute 40 to 50% of Musim Mas supply base. It's a big challenge. The potential to improve their yields and then provide more oil for the world is big. It's tremendous. And now we have more than 40 people dedicated just to train the trainers, who in turn train the smallholders. The way to a sustainable palm oil, it's really about empowering the smallholders, giving them the capacity they need, the skill sets they know, so that they eventually will take their skill sets, which will go far down. And then we start to work and engage them on this journey towards our vision of sustainable palm oil, where there's no deforestation, no peat, and that sustainable agronomic practices are being utilized.
Now, with this issue about the transboundary haze here in Singapore that we are even experiencing this very morning today, do you think it's an issue that can be solved?
We can only do what we can solve and what we can implement. As consumers, we vote for the right thing to do. Then it has a trickle-down effect to the private sector and to the policymakers that this is what the people want. The correct framework and infrastructure and institution will fall in place to then address that need. And that's why Musim Mas, we joined the Fire-Free Alliance, which is really pulp and paper and palm oil companies getting together and see how can we possibly have a sensible plan on tackling the fires that are beyond our concession.
So as you know, PM Haze just launched their Haze-Free Foodstand campaign. Now, how do you see this fitting within the larger landscape of sustainable agricultural production?
So what we see about the campaign is that it can really bring that understanding of what the industry has come so far, and then vote with their money, right, as consumers, to say, I stand for positive action, I stand for impacts on the ground. Over the years, we find that our customers, especially the consumer goods companies, are more willing to work with Musim Mas because we are the sustainable company, and that by working with us, their reputation in sustainable palm oil is better.
What other advice or messages would you share with our audience members today as consumers?
Buy sustainable palm oil products in the supermarket. Please understand more about the history and culture of Malaysia and Indonesia, and that understand that the context of where this country has come from, and not downplay what they have achieved.
Well, there you go. Very nicely put. Thank you for chatting with us today, Carolyn.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon.